Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all those things that affect the automotive business. Because the better we do our jobs, the better the customer experience. And it's always been about the customer experience. So whether it's the front of the house, the back of the house, the office, doesn't matter. As my good friend Paul Machine always says, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what we do here every Sunday. We bring on the experts to share with us what they do that helps dealerships improve the customer experience, become more efficient and profitable. So it's a win-win for everybody. And I am very happy. You may notice some music playing in the background. I don't know if you know that song, but it's electric.
Yep.
In today's show, we're talking about electric. And I figured if we're going to talk about electric, who better to bring on than John Ellis? This guy, he lives, breathes, sleeps electric. So John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in automotive and how you got to this point? I think you have a pretty extensive background.
Certainly. Hey, thank you for that. Yeah, so I've been in automotive for just shy of 20 years. I started with retail operations on the floor selling cars. I moved into our vendor relationship when I came over to a third-party website that you may know called autotrader.com.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I got there in the early 2000s where we were doing kind of the same things we're doing today, teaching dealers how to evolve and transform, to use a new digital space to reach customers and create an experience that their customers would be wowed by. Same thing we're trying to do today with EVs. I did that for a few years, and then I moved into our product management side of the business where we built trade-in marketplace with some algorithms we purchased from Robert Hollingshead, and then KBB came into the picture. And so really helping evolve what we're doing today. Again, the education of the industry now, not just how to sell cars, but how to educate yourselves and how to educate your customers with ratings and reviews, all the good things that came from those acquisitions. And then I went over to Toyota for a little while. So I ran their fixed ops division in the central US. So I ran district sales managers that would sell fixed operations software like Xtime and the like into their Toyota dealerships. I did that for just shy of a year when we stood up a large enterprise group back here at Cox for our largest dealers, and I couldn't pass it up. I got a call to come back to really bring the entire automotive ecosystem as one solutions offering to our largest clients. So talk about a lot of fun, right? So learning the clients, learning their biggest needs, learning how the ecosystem in automotive could help them grow and evolve. Did that for many years. Most of that was centered around inventory acquisition, retail, and disposal strategy. So as an economist, I was able to lean on my education and my passion and then bring it to the test when it came to these large inventory strategies that we had to build throughout the those years, specifically when the pandemic hit. So I just got finished writing a book. I'll let you guys know about it when we title it up, but it's all about the pandemic and inventory strategy. But it was an exciting time, and we made it through. I think the future's still bright for us. And finally, I moved into electric last year, right? So we have a big electric division now, and my job, or I was tasked with understanding the landscape, understanding electric, bringing it into our ecosystem as well as to our customers and clients. So really becoming the industry thought leader. So I'll tell you, I love the word thought leader, the word expert. I don't think we can use it yet. The industry's so young. I would say someone who's been in the industry 7 years is ancient, and specifically the battery electric that we're in today. But yes, I live it, I breathe it, I study it every day. So I'm excited to be here, maybe to help educate the audience, but also for us to educate ourselves.
Thank you. Wow, that's a heck of a history you have there, John.
Thank you.
And it's been an educational experience for me just getting ready for the show, because we all have these preconceived notions of what we think electric vehicles are all about. And the reality is that a lot of the stuff that I thought, that I heard, isn't really true. Now, I don't want to say it's agenda based, but the facts don't align with what the real story is. And we're not a political show, so we're not taking any kind of a politics stance whatsoever. We are merely talking about the technology and the data, because that's apolitical, right?
Paul, I can tell you, it's interesting you say that, because when I first got into this space, I got some of that pushback as well. Some friends and family almost, that I had an agenda. If you're going into EV, you must have an agenda. So having to educate my own family from day one. And look, we've had a Tesla in the family for 8 years. We can talk a little bit about that today, because ownership experience is something I'm very familiar with. But that wasn't the point. It's like you're pushing the agenda. So we have to be, very cognizant of that and make sure we understand that this is about everybody getting their own choice, having their own choice. You and I said it earlier. We're not one way or the other.
Right.
We're just for both. Yeah.
Right. My new car should be in within a matter of days, and that's an internal combustion Subaru Legacy Limited. So I'm not pro or con either way. I want to get to a couple of comments before we dig in further, because there was so much that I discovered. So I'm sure
Certainly
there's going to be some stuff that other people are going to hear for the first time. Starting us off tonight, Russell B. Hill. Good evening, all. EV, and EV. Cannot wait to get the tidbits of info that will be coming out of this one. Thank you, Russell. Paul Machine, speaking of my good buddy. Hola, all. And Linda Hansen. Good evening, all. We got Michael Weldon from the West Coast. Hello and good evening. Looking forward to this broadcast. Paul Machine says, I can do the EV slide. That was my wife's idea to play that in the background. I thought it was kind of a good idea, so that's why I played it. My other SDL brother, Jerry Davis. Hello, all. Another great show in store. EV has me scared, but sure, why? But I am sure we will all learn something tonight. I'm pretty much going to guarantee that. And my other SDL buddy, Sean Armour. Good evening, gents. Earl Sticks Brown, good evening, greetings everyone. And Tully Williams, also from the West Coast with the Nilo Group. Hello all. Says he loves EVs. And Paul Machine says, great topic to learn and share. All right, so right out of the gate, we have, and I could be wrong, but we've got four. We've got the BEV, which is the battery electric vehicle. We've got the HEV, which is the hybrid electric vehicle. We've got the PHEV, which is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And last but not least, unless I left one off, is FCEV, which is the fuel cell electric vehicle. And I'll be honest, I don't know anything. I know this much about fuel cell electric.
Right.
Did I miss one, or is that it?
No, those are the main four. You got all four pillars.
All
Certainly.
right.
Do you want to go through them?
Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah.
I can tell you, we do EV 101s for our dealers. So this is really where we start, just because understanding what's coming in the store and what you're seeing and what you're driving and what's out there is critically important. You make a lot of mistakes if you don't. So the battery electric vehicle is just that. It's a vehicle that's completely driven by the battery. So the propulsion starts and ends with the battery only. Battery drives electricity to the propulsion system to the electric motor, and that's how the wheels roll. Sometimes you have one electric motor, sometimes you have two. That's the dual motor that you see a lot of times in the description of a vehicle. The hybrid electric vehicle charges its own battery itself, but it is a combustion engine, so you don't have to plug it in, which is the PHEV, which is the plug-in hybrid vehicle where you plug that one in to get additional charge. You get more range out of that one, obviously. And of course, a fuel cell vehicle is just the hydrogen tanks inside the vehicle. As the hydrogen combusts, it drives electricity to the battery, which then drives electricity to the train, which would be your motors. Unfortunately, we won't get into this much today, but that's still one that doesn't seem applicable to passenger, only because of its application to be fueled and its energy loss during that combustion. It's one of the reasons why we're moving towards battery from combustion is the efficient use of energy. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of that today.
So those are the four basic electric vehicles that are out there. And, we want to dispel some of the myths right out of, well, before that, they've been around since what, the 1800s?
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell the story, they're about 120 years old. Most people don't believe that. because they can't think of it that way. But it was first invented in 1884, the rechargeable battery. That's a long time ago. Then William Morrison in 1890 had the first dual carriage electric vehicle, and it went about 4 miles an hour and 50 miles. That's incredible, right? Think about that. In that time, that was a pretty efficient vehicle. The reason why it had some popularity is because the ICE engines did not have an economical way, and it wasn't a production line vehicle yet, so it's a little more expensive. But as soon as Henry Ford came out with a production line and subsidies started hitting the oil and gas industry, it really did a complete 180. And in around 1908, we started seeing the Model T come out. It dwarfed the electric vehicle just because of range and affordability, government incentives, and the electric start. So once you got an electric start in there, it was all over, right? The ladies of the day, right? They didn't have to go and crank the car, which is another
right.
Once that took root, I mean, it literally dwarfed the electric vehicle, and that's why it's hard to remember it from back then.
And I think the oil prices went down too. So between the oil prices and that electric, the starter motor.
Electric start really was it. It's assembly line. Oil prices, the government did subsidize too. So they went down, they were subsidized. But I'm telling you, you're probably right. The electric start was probably the biggest piece of that pie, right?
Yeah, because how many people want to get out there and turn the crank?
Right.
I mean, I guess the best way to bring it to today's thought is years ago, motorcycles were all kickstart. For many years now, it's electric start.
Yeah, great analogy.
Right. I've seen guys out there kicking that bike like they're kicking somebody that owed them money, and the bike wouldn't always start. Right.
That's so funny. Yeah, I had one. I can remember the day, but also think about a stick shift to an automatic, right? Kind of the same analogy, right? Everybody, even a sports car enthusiast, most of them, unless you're just a real old school hot rod, they want an automatic, even in their Corvettes and their Camaros.
And there's certainly a lot of companies making EVs today. I mean, we all hear about Tesla, but there's tons of companies: Toyota, General Motors, BMW, Nissan, Hyundai, Rivian, and there's a whole host of others.
We're going to see a lot of Asian vehicles coming into our market. BYD is a big one. They're going to have some affordable passenger vehicles. They're in the big Class 6 to Class 8 category now, doing very well. We're going to see a lot of passenger vehicles from our Asian counterparts. And listen, that's not a bad thing. We can get into that as well. So we're not being political, being economical. Having those batteries in the U.S. to recycle and use again to produce new batteries is not a bad thing. There's ways to look at it all and really go, okay, this, we can use this to our advantage. So we'll talk more about that. But certainly there's tons of vehicles, and I think there's 74 vehicles today, make model vehicles. Now, unfortunately, only 24 will be applicable to receive the credits when the Inflation Recovery Act comes into effect in January.
Yeah,
we can talk about that as well, but I'm seeing some really good things out of that act as well. Already we're seeing some progress there, so we can get into that if the audience wants to as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're dying to find out, because I know I am. I got a couple of comments I want to get to. Joe Clementi, hello all, excited to hear from the subject matter expert. Thought leader, right?
Thought leader, yeah. I don't think I can claim expert just yet.
Well, you're probably ahead of whoever's in second place that I know anyway. Sean Armour, Paul, watch not to get hit by JE biceps. Holly Cobalt, hello everyone from the Carolinas. Welcome, Holly. Thanks for being on. And Eric, good evening, everyone. Eric is another one of my SDL buds. Every Sunday morning, we get together and we talk about all things fixed ops. I think we had maybe 40 people on this morning's call. So it's people in automotive service that get together every Sunday morning. It's 8 a.m. Eastern time. We get together for a little over an hour and we talk about all those things that dealerships experience. So make sure you reach out to Eric or Joe Chambers for the link and join that show. Awesome show. And LinkedIn user is my friend Lamont. Right after the show ends, it goes from LinkedIn user to Lamont. We've never figured out why. I've not got an answer from anybody at LinkedIn. So we know when LinkedIn user comes on, it's Lamont. He says, hello, everyone, LinkedIn user, Lamont. Jerry Davis says, the issue I see is the power grid can't support the added drain. I love this because this feeds into what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Oh my God, this is too good. It says, support the added drain. I also would like to point out the amount of energy needed to produce an electric vehicle is huge. And my other brother from another mother is Robert Sebastian. Greetings, friends. All right, let's start off with some of the myths, right? There's a few myths around this, you think?
Certainly. It's probably our number one talking point every week. It's something we have to reiterate over and over again. I can give you a few. You can ask me about a few. You tell me how you want to go.
Well, let me throw one out. So EVs are worse for the climate than gasoline cars.
Yes, we hear that a lot. And I think one of your comments below were, hey, the amount of carbon emission used in producing EVs and doing the mineral refining and those kind of things offset. And studies have been done. And the answer is no, not necessarily. So what happens is the efficient use of energy, we've already talked about this, in a vehicle is 4 times greater for a BEV engine than an ICE engine. So we can do some of the math, and I've got it here to discuss with the audience today. If they want, we can do an elementary version. But an ICE engine takes 4 times as much fossil fuel to go the same distance as a BEV does in energy, using that same carbon footprint to produce that energy. So if we are 1-to-1, which we're not, in carbon production to produce the energy, we're still 1/4 more, 3/4 more efficient in a BEV. So for me to drive 100 miles in an electric car or a fossil fuel car, I'm saving up to 4 times the energy efficient use. So even if it was 1-to-1, I'm still beating it by 3. And that's a big consideration when you're thinking about eventually getting to a point where these batteries are starting to be recycled and the mining's not going to need to happen anymore. You can't say that with fossil fuel. And these new batteries with new recycled minerals won't have the same carbon footprint for production either. So we're excited about that future state, which is probably not in our lifetime, but it could be. Maybe we're 25 years off. But it's an achievable goal, which is not available in fossil fuel. But what's really exciting is to go the same 100 miles, you do it in 4 times less energy. And that brings a whole new dialogue to the equation.
Now, the way I see things, at the rate that technology has been advancing, it's been exponential growth. 25 years may seem like a far off time, but we don't really know, right? I mean, anything's possible. It could be a lot quicker than that. We just don't know.
It could be much quicker. What we're seeing now in production and adoption has grown. Even Jim Farley at Ford said just the other day, it has caught the industry's top leaders caught them off guard, by surprise, because the adoption rate has grown 2 to 3 times faster. So in the next 3 years, we're going to grow to an adoption faster than we did in the first 8. And no one can believe that, right? And thinking about, we've got grid questions here, and we're going to address those as well. But thinking about battery production, we're going to 30 to 50 million in production, and by the end of by 2025, we're going to have a lot of activity in the marketplace, and I think that's going to make things go a lot faster. Technology is changing by the day with the batteries. The chemistry is changing by the day. Range is changing by the day. Efficiency. So the reason EVs are, we're going to talk about this too, cheaper today is not because the battery is less efficient, but less inexpensive, but it's because the production costs are going down because we're getting more efficient in producing these batteries and these vehicles, which means we're reducing our carbon footprint. We're finding ways to do a better job at producing the batteries. So it's going to be a very exciting time. We're all going to learn through it.
Now, I love Jerry's question because I had bought into that myself until I did a bunch more research on it. So let's look at California, for instance. Okay.
Yeah.
If you add up all of the electric vehicles there are, it's still a fraction of the gas vehicles. It's a fraction. Okay. Now, think about this for a moment. If everybody charged their car at the exact same time, okay, now, with everybody that's here and everybody that you know and that the audience knows, what are the odds that all of us are going to go to the gas station and fill up our cars at the exact same time every day? What are the odds of that?
They're not very good, I would imagine.
Not very good. So when you look at the realistic charging of you look at the population of how many EVs there are compared to gas engines. Now you take a look at when they're actually charging them. I think the data indicates that it affects the grid less than 5%.
Yeah, so I have those numbers here. California's Energy Commission says during their peak hours between 4 and 9 p.m., electric vehicles today account for less than 1% of total energy use. But here's the bigger number, because we're talking about adoption, and California has EU numbers for adoption. Unlike the rest of North America, California is invested. But by 2030, California phases out a lot of their gas-powered vehicles, which we've heard in the news lately. It's still only projected to be up to 4%. So the amount of energy use in that state comes mostly from heating and air and all the other utilities they use, not electric vehicles. And so they're doing the studies now, and they're finding that it's not going to be as detrimental to the grid in this capacity as everybody thinks. The problem is there were some policies in place before that put other dampers on the energy production in that state long before EVs came along to show any kind of energy usage that people would pay attention to. So they're making up for that with alternatives and renewables. We know that there's a lot of studies about the effectiveness of the solar and wind and water renewables. So excited about the future there. But right now, it's not the EVs that are causing problems in California. By 2030, it shouldn't be as well.
The air conditioning, the heat waves, that's the stuff that drains the grid. But
that's exactly right.
Jerry, I was almost fully bought into it because you see the memes, you see everything, but you don't see the facts, which is why I was so excited to bring you on, because you know the facts and you know the numbers. So let me go to a couple of comments. Craig Tomazik says, Lamont, I see your picture as well as your name. Off topic. Sorry, I thought I'd let you know. For some reason, I can't see it. I don't know why. Yeah. Steve Apicella, my good friend, evolving the products, #auto retailing is selling is an expectation, which we must embrace and understand. Thank you, John. Resolving how our great industry transcends the one-time transaction and embraces the lifetime value of the customer before and after the sale, whether it's ICE or EV, should be the real differentiator between the brick and mortar dealers and the 100% only online retailers. Steve is always freaking on point with this stuff. Every single.
Very good.
Thank you, Steve. Russell Hill says the research is overwhelming and changing all the time. As we're having this conversation.
That's why we don't like to use the word expert, thought leader. The battery chemistry is changing by the quarter. Saying one thing last quarter is different this quarter. Great point there.
Sean Armour, question. What will companies do to increase the power/battery efficiency in the harsh Canadian weather? I hear that Teslas here are a disaster to drive as it relates to battery charge during winter months. Any thoughts, please? Was considering getting one, but this is the one factor discouraging me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Tesla has their BMSs are they're working on those problems. There's a 40% degradation in that kind of weather. There's no question that if you're a 280 mile range Tesla, that you can expect about a 40% degradation in the harshest parts of the winter. You just have to plan for that, route your map, and make sure that you fit your day. We've talked about that before the call. It's easy to do with a little planning. But I know Tesla's, modifying their battery architecture for just that. But that's just something they're working through. Not being an engineer and not working for Tesla, who's a leader in this space, CATL and LG and Samsung, also the battery manufacturers. I know that's something that's on their mind. Here's the thing about EVs, and it's very important, even for us. It's not our primary vehicle. And when I have someone who's questioning an EV and go, well, I mean, is it something that I would ever want? I just say, go drive one, and then let's talk some more. So really, it's not a toy, and it's not just for fun. It's practical, and it is able to be used for day to day. But not everybody is ready, and their climate's not ready for it to be their primary vehicle. So I love these questions because I like the way people are thinking, because you have to make sure it's right for you.
Now, so you said it's about a 40% degradation. So
In the harshest of winter times. Yeah.
So a 280 mile car, we can expect 168 miles out of, right?
Yeah, that's your max degradation, but we always give the max because we don't want to say, oh, 20%. No, John said 20%, or the research John read said 20%. But just be prepared to get about 40% less in the harshest of weathers. And if you get better, that's great.
That's still roughly 168 miles. And we had a conversation about this before the show, which we're going to get into one of the other myths. We're going to take the sledgehammer. We're going to bust that myth wide open, because that's a great one. I love that one. So we're going to get back to that one in just a few, Sean, but you'll be very surprised when you hear the answer. Linda Hansen, welcome. Range greatly diminishes with accessory use. Weather has a big impact, getting better all the time, but it is an issue. And we talked about that before the show also. Man, I love this, because it rolls out exactly as we thought it would.
Yeah.
Because we were all there. We know what we know based on what we've heard, and we don't necessarily know what we don't know. So this is very exciting. Russell Hill says range anxiety is a huge challenge right now. The anxiety is for real. It is definitely real. Joe Chambers, what is the suggested number of chargers needed for a mid-sized Japanese import? Are you talking about the number of chargers for a store? Or did charges change to charger? Maybe expand on that question a little bit more, Joe.
He may be talking about charge cycles, so we'll have to wait and see what he says.
Okay. Steve Apicella, widely available gas stations didn't precede the original mass production of the ICE vehicles. I like this guy. As EVs scale, the innovation methods and infrastructure to recharge them will logically scale with it. All right, let's tackle the mileage myth, okay?
Great.
And if I can throw this out here, and I'd love you to expand on it. So I heard everywhere, and I'm hearing it now, mileage or range is an issue that we should all be concerned about, and rightfully so. I can appreciate that. What I learned in digging into this deeper is that the average person drives less than 50 miles per day, all right? Less than 50 miles per day. So Sean, that Tesla that maybe will get 168 miles, guess what? For the average person, and again, we're talking averages. There are always high and low ends of both the spectrums, but the average, that 168 miles is 3 times what they normally drive. So I'm not saying it's not a concern, but should it be as big a concern?
So that's a great question. I did a LinkedIn profile survey. So you can go find me on John Ellis at LinkedIn. In that survey, I had 5,000 respondents, and I asked, what were your detractors? What were the things about EVs that concerned you? And range and charging was the number one concern. Affordability was only 14%, believe it or not. So we can maybe talk about that. That surprised me, of 5,000 respondents. So it is a big concern. And I can honestly say when we got ours first, we didn't drive it hardly anywhere, scared to death of not being able to charge it, right? And get stuck. So we're all in the same boat. The good news is we've learned, and with battery chemistry architecture advancements, we see that not only are our expectations too high, the battery is advancing to even meet those over expectations. So let me give you an example. In the EU, the consumer perception of battery range needed is around 200. And in Asia, it's sub 200. In America, it is approaching 400 miles. Now, look, we know infrastructure is different. In these international countries that are much smaller roads, people walk everywhere, not much driving. But if the perceived needed range is 400, well, we're almost there now. The Chevy Silverado is going to come out at 400. The Equinox is going to come out at 400. The one next battery in the BMW is going to be 600. The Tesla's 320 now, and I think you can pay $9,000 for that upgraded package to bring it to 345. The point I'm trying to make is we're getting pretty close to our exceeded expectations, but when we do the math, and we do this with dealers a lot, sitting at the desk with a customer, we ask them to tell us about their day. How do you drive? What is your commute like? What is your weekend travel like? And what we find is Just like me filling up an ICE engine that gets 340 miles to the full tank, I don't fill it up but once a week anyway. So I use about 340 miles in a week. And we're finding with those conversations, customers go, oh, you're right. I do go about 60 miles max a day. So I'm going to be just fine when I get home to level 1 charge it. Just plug it into the regular adapter. We're not even talking about spending any money on a level 2. Because if you're only using 50, 60 miles a day, you can plug it in for the night on a level 1 and be just fine. Be fully charged at that small percentage use of battery energy. So it is one that is notably concernable, but there are a lot of good information out there to help you reduce your anxiety.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We get to a couple of comments here. Let's see here. Russell B. Hill says, I just read that just to keep up with the demand as far as the infrastructure would require implementing 458 chargers a day for the next 8 years. Seems like a tall challenge, but that doesn't seem to jive with what we're talking about here. If you can plug it in at home in an outlet.
Yep. So 110, 220, DC fast charging. If you have 10,000 you want to spend at home, but that's not necessary. That's usually mobile charging when people are out and they don't have a 4-hour stint to sit and charge. And they want to charge in 30 minutes, even 15 minutes to get 25% charge. So really, and there's some new technology. Philips Electric has something that'll wrap around your meter box instead of doing major renovations to your junction box, which is a lot less expensive, to allow you to level 2 charge at home. So there's so many options out there now. And I'll tell you, I sat on a plane with a guy flying to the Fleet Forward show. And he was in solar business. He was just flying back from California doing some technology work with solar. And he said, John, you can pretty much put a solar roof on your house today with incentives and the cost of ownership payoffs for nothing. So add a solar roof or panel portion to your homes and bring it right down to the level 2 charger, and you're in great shape, right? So there's so many options. It's going to get better and better as the technology gets better and incentives get better. So adoption is a concern, but at the end of the day, that concern is met head on with the technology for the infrastructure as well. And the new bill is helping out a lot with that as well.
Now, let's put this into perspective. A full charge costs about $7.
Anywhere from 12 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, and it comes to about just what you just said, depending on where you are in the country, but it averages about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. It's incredibly inexpensive today.
So that's $7. So let's take somebody that drives 12,000 miles per year. Okay. That's an annual cost, $324.32. Just an estimate. But I'm a little OCD, so I like to round it to 2. My car, which estimates 25 miles to the gallon, that same 12,000 miles per year of driving is roughly $1,915.20. So it's almost 6 times more expensive to
operate,
power my car for 12 months as it is an electric vehicle. Now, I always thought, and then that goes into the next thing, I always thought that, hey, but electric vehicles are expensive, right? My initial thought before I dug into this, I'm thinking 80 grand to 125,000. Who can spend that, right? Not too many people. Now, when you look at the cars that are manufactured today, the car sales, the average selling price for a car in 2022, I believe that the data I read was $48,000. And of 10 EVs that are on my list here in my research, of the 10, 5 of them are $44,450 or less, and 5 of them are $59,900 or more. So when we think about what the EV costs to operate for a year, it's almost a sixth of what my personal car does in a year, just based purely on the data. And then when you jump to, oh, but they cost so much more, well, clearly not, because you can get a mini SE hardtop EV for $29,900, the base starting price. Who knows what they add on to it if you want everything. But the point is, it's still an inexpensive vehicle that you can get today that's very economical to operate. I want to get to a couple of comments. So I hope that maybe shifts the perspective a little bit, Russell. When data is put out, whether it's I'm looking at it or you're looking at it or somebody else is looking at it, I guess we always have to filter because it depends who's putting it out and to what end. And I have found that somewhere in the middle lies the truth, right?
Yeah, to back you up, Consumer Reports just put out a study that says the average ICE vehicle costs $10,000 more to operate annually than a battery electric vehicle. So they've done the studies as well over multiple platforms, different sedans, crossovers, and such. And make model likes, you're absolutely right. There's a battery component issue there too. So we can talk about that in a minute. A lot of people are scared about replacing that battery and how much that would cost. Yeah. And we've got a story for that as well.
A couple more comments, then we'll go back to the battery thing because I like that. Kenny D, how are you, Kenny? Tonight's conversation is delectable, scrumptiously, deliciously, edibly tasty good. EV sounds so tasty. I love this guy. I'm going to see you in January at NADA, Kenny. Just letting you know, coming to Dallas in January. Steve Apostella said, how many miles does the average driver travel today in their ICE vehicle? I think we said less than 50. And even when you subtract cold weather range limitation, the battery life is still well beyond that daily expectation. Bam. That's what I said earlier.
Yeah, reinforce everything you just said.
Yeah. It's 3 days worth of driving on average, and we're worried about it, right? I remember my car used to hit when the light came on, says destination empty was 0. I knew I still had another day to go.
Very good.
Roger Gutierrez, the technology has been rushed. He says GM is having a lot of problems with it. Kia also. Can you elaborate on that, John?
Well, I'm looking at his quote or his comment, and he's talking about, I think maybe the One Next battery with GM, and that is still in production. So I'm not certain if that's what he's talking about. It's not ready for prime time yet. It's a mixed architecture without an anode. So that's pretty unique, thinking about a battery having a cathode and an anode without one. An LFP battery that's prismatic, so it gives you a lot more range and a lot more cycle life, which is the problem with an anode-less battery is cycle life. They fixed that, but I'm assuming that there may be some issues. But I haven't heard of any major issues with BMW, except maybe if he's talking about a few thermal events with some prismatic cells, and they've uncovered that, and it hadn't been widespread. It was just 1 or 2. Yeah, I think that's well under control. I did see a study where they said 1 for 1, meaning relationally, ICE engines have more thermal events than battery electric engines. And I think that was an IHS report.
And I want to reiterate, we are not pro or con electric or ICE. We are merely presenting the data in a non-political fashion.
Yeah, certainly. We have 2 ICE engines in the driveway and love them.
My brand new car, it hasn't even gotten here yet. It's an ICE car. It's a nice car too, pun intended. Joe Chambers, yes, chargers are extremely expensive, and unlike gasoline, modern dealerships are required to have a certain number of chargers on site for both customer-facing and internal use.
Yeah, Ford just made that announcement. They're going to do the same.
Is that part of the, what is it, I heard some number, $9 million investment or something that the dealers need to make? Is that about right?
There's a couple levels of investment. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I did see the interview just the other day. If they choose in 2004 to play, then they can make 1 of 2 levels of investment. One is just a certain number of chargers facing the customer and facing internally. The second level of investment is another number of chargers facing the customer. And then if they choose not to invest right away, they're limited on the number of EVs they can get during that term. And in 2027, they can go back and invest again and could become a full player. So they've got it laid out pretty well. A lot of it has to do with training too, not updating their facilities a little bit. I just mentioned the updates, not anything major, but a training is big for them. The customer experiences are number 1 concern.
Wow. It's like it's something new, right? It's always been about the customer experience. I just put an article out on LinkedIn recently. Yeah, it's always been about that. But we in the car business, every few years we dust it off, we polish it and we bring it back out and we put it on the front line as though it's something new, when it's not. But great questions, Joe. Mark Williamson, infrastructures will not be able to accommodate vehicle sale expectations for the foreseeable future. Is that some of what we just discussed?
I'm sorry, I was reading Craig's comment. I loved it. No, go say it again.
Mark Williamson says infrastructures will not be able to accommodate vehicle sale expectations for the foreseeable future.
That's a storyline. I can tell you this. The Inflation Recovery Act has accelerated companies like Bling, Electrify America, and others to get in the game fast and quick. So where there's always a financing arm and an equity arm to these things, right? This is a brand new industry for us. And if there's government assistance the way we're seeing it now, I have a feeling we're going to see that accelerate at the same speed as adoption. Now, here's the other thing. The Inflation Recovery Act did not incentivize EV adoption until really 2025 and beyond because of the materials requirements from North America or trade partner alliances. So because of that, I just mentioned 24 of the 75 vehicles available today, even though a couple of Toyota and Tesla have met their threshold, they'll get their money back. So 24 of 74 vehicles are only available. So people, and of course, there are income requirements and price of vehicle requirements, and I can share all that with your audience. But at the end of the day, it'll take 3 or 4 years to have those material requirements. Tesla's building here. CATL's building in Canada. All these new battery manufacturing plants are coming because of it, and they're accelerating it. So I think what you're going to find is adoption slows a little bit, infrastructure builds a little bit, and then all of a sudden 25 to 30, we're going to see an unbelievable acceleration of adoption with an infrastructure that's really starting to get ready.
Now, I'm glad you said what you did, because it's the governmental incentives that are going to make this happen, right?
No question.
It's important for everybody to realize this is not our first rodeo with this. When we rewind the tape, let's go to the videotape. You like that one, right, Joe? Joe Chambers? Let's go to the videotape and you rewind back to Henry Ford's days, wasn't it the government that brought down the price of oil? Which that, in conjunction with the advent of technology, i.e. the starter, was what catapulted the ICE vehicles to where they are, or where they've been for pretty much most of our lives, right? Because this is something, EVs have been around for a few years, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm 61 years old. I don't know how old you are, but most of my life, it's been all about ICE. So it's happened before and it's happening now. So I wouldn't necessarily sell it short, Mark. A lot of what your feelings are and some of the other people's feelings based on comments are some of the exact same feelings that I echoed until I rolled up my sleeve and took out the shovel and started digging into the information. And I do my best to look at all different sources. And I try to stay away from any type of extremist sources because I want to know what the data is. And when you just cited Consumer Reports, what I love about Consumer Reports is they have no axe to grind with anyone. They pay for all their stuff that they test, right? They don't take any monies from anybody. So their data is as raw and real as it can get. All they care about is making sure the consumer is protected.
So one last thing on that, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Tesla's playing nice in the sandbox now. They're putting CSS chargers so that all their Teslas can use other networks like Bling and Electrify America and so on. But they're also opening up their charging network, which rated by J.D. Powers was the #1 charging network by consumers. The most favorable, the ones that were reliable, that worked when you got there, they were more available, and they charged at the rate of speed close to what you expected. All those conditions, Tesla won hands down over all the others. Of course, they've been doing it a lot longer, so they've kind of perfected it. And now they've opened up their network to all other users. So if you're a Porsche owner, a Kia owner, you can charge at a Tesla network. That kind of partnerships are going to help advance this electrification wave as well.
So there are plenty of chargers out there, but let's not forget, everybody that's watching this now, has a charging station at their home. It's called the outlet that's in your wall. Everybody has that. And we all sleep 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. Wow. I never get 8 hours, but the point is we sleep long enough that we could plug our car into what we have now without going crazy for anything.
And you have to remember, we're only at 5% adoption in the U.S. So we hear, well, everybody charges it at night, but when they're sleeping, then we're going to kill the grid. We can't kill the grid at 5%. At 40% maybe, but by that time the grid's going to be upgraded. We're going to have more nuclear power. There are going to be supplemental ways to get that power to the grid. It's not just going to be relying on what we see today.
And we're 3 hour difference between Connecticut and California. So
yeah, exactly.
like what I was saying earlier, the likelihood that every one of us is going to the gas station at the exact same time every single day is next to nil, if not less. Linda Hansen says the needs analysis is critical, especially how and where the customer plans to charge. Absolutely. Don't the cars come with a way to know where these charging stations are?
Yes, my Tesla's dashboard will tell us all around the route where all the chargers are. Here's a good one though. I like this one because I was just in Chicago a week ago, and when I was driving downtown, and everyone was parked in the median. The parking in Chicago, right? It's hard to find a place, and they literally sleep overnight with their cars parked in the median, tip to tail. So how do they get charged? And that's a good question. You have to understand the needs analysis, and I love what you're saying, because those cars can last 3 or 4 days without charging. So is there an external charging area? Because we know that Europe has just taken the incentives away from vehicle purchases and put it in infrastructure. They did that in the middle of this year because adoption is so high over there, and they know that infrastructure is where the money needs to go from the public sector. All right, so we're not there yet, but we are seeing some commercial entities start building retrofitting parking garages. We're going to see much more of that, where places you can go with multi-charging sectors. But until then, certainly a needs analysis is the most important thing you can do to decide if EV is right for you today.
Great comment, Linda. Thank you.
Yes.
And Linda says, the EV I evaluated for several months had 1 mile per 1 hour of charge level 1. Not ideal.
Yeah, it's certainly not ideal unless you're only driving 20 or 30 miles a day. Then 12 hours at night, you get 12 more charges back, somewhere in that range, 12 to 15. So you're pretty close to topping off. Now, remember, we're not going to have a chance to talk about this today because of time, but battery degradation is something you have to pay attention to. How you treat that car, and level 1 and level 2 charging are optimal, and topping off is the most optimal. The BMS, the battery management system, won't let you charge less than 10, won't let you drive and deplete at less than 10, nor will it let you charge higher than 90. But if you go 20-80 all the time, you're going to degrade a lot faster than if you charge from 40 to 60, 40 to 60, 40 to 60. And that's what they call the topping off. So there's level 1 and level 2 charging when you're just topping off is optimal use anyway. You don't want to fast charge it all the way full every time you can.
Which is really not that much different than how we charge our cell phones today. Right? We're already used to that, although maybe a lot of people aren't used to, are up to speed with what best practices are, and they're
not. They're not. We were never explained that when we purchased ours, and it's something we had to learn on our own. The fact is, thermal heating of the battery cells during charging. If you can minimize the time of charging, no matter what level, you're going to save battery life. Now, look, batteries are going to be 1 million mile batteries pretty soon, and ours is almost 10 years old, and it's got 91% state of health. These batteries are lasting a long time. So the only reason we would replace ours is because we want to go up in range, and you can do that. You can buy extra range first, believe it or not. You can pay, I think it's $9,000 for more horsepower and range, but you can actually go up to another battery level, LFP or against nickel, magnesium, cobalt. You can choose a different one if it fits in the vehicle. Certainly, you can choose a different makeup, right? Prismatic with more density in it, and it will cost you. So there's a lot of things to consider, but at the end of the day, that battery is going to last another 10 years. 20 years of the battery, and that's your engine and your transmission, the two most expensive pieces of that vehicle.
Now, you have to figure the average vehicle on the road today is some 12 plus miles. That doesn't mean
12.2 years. Yeah.
12.2 miles. I mean, years.
12.2
that doesn't
years.
mean one person has owned it for 12.2 years.
That's right.
Right? It could
That's right.
be 2, 3, 4 owners.
And the average battery warranty is 8 to 10 years and 100 to 150,000 miles.
Yeah, I saw one the other day. It was like up to 175. I forget.
Yep.
I forget which manufacturer that was, but that's still based on what the warranty is. What you're telling me as a thought leader, the expected life is. I'm not as freaked out about the battery. Now, I may still never buy one if it's out of warranty, but based on the pure data, I don't think it's something that we should really be freaked out about.
Batteries expected to outlive the vehicle very soon. The technology, the architecture, all of that's getting to a point now. The cooling mechanisms, the software inside that teaches the battery how to behave and protect itself. They're expecting a 1 million mile battery. That's from Tesla and from OneNext and LG and CAT-L, all of them. Expect that battery to outlast the vehicle.
Steve Apicella, I have and love my high horsepower ICE BMW M engine. There's really few vehicles like that, Steve.
Beautiful car.
It's truly a work of art, but it's a representation of the past, not the future. We also have 2 EV sedans and 2 EV pickup trucks in our family, and they are both much better performance than my 600 horsepower work of art. Embrace the reality.
I love that. I told you I drove a Tesla Model Plaid. It came off the production this week. My dentist got one. He had, I think, the number 4, 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds in drag mode. The fastest car in North America, production car in North America.
1.9 seconds. Think about that. I think the crazy threshold was like 3-point-something seconds.
I have a video of it up on my newsletter. You can look at it on LinkedIn. The owner is in the passenger seat. He's not done this yet, screaming with joy. He's not, a little scared. He was fine. He was super excited, but it was like driving a motorcycle. I could barely hold on to the steering wheel.
Tully says we are seeing chargers not working.
Yes, very big problem. And part of the IRA, Inflation Recovery Act, is to have incentives in place and disincentivizes when those chargers don't work. It is maintenance and service of those chargers is probably our number one concern. The good news is Teslas are, that was part of the JD Power survey. I suggested you look at it and look at that if it's your concern, because it'll help you understand where we're headed as an industry. But that is being addressed right now, and it's a very viable concern. I'm glad you brought that up.
The Tesla, I think they were rated number 1 on the satisfaction index as it relates to charging.
Yeah.
Joe Chambers, I'm just not convinced. These suggested range values are not real world. Power seat, HVAC, takes a lot of juice. You want to take that one?
Yeah, so we're getting the range with ours. I can only talk from personal experience, and then when we talk to, you can talk to the manufacturers, you can talk to the experts, the people who do the studies, but you want to talk to the people that own the vehicle, right, and drive it every day. And we get our range, right? We get our suggested range at 80%, and everyone I've spoken to does the same. Now, listen, type of driving and type of charging have a lot to do with it. Battery fail rates are less than 0.3% in the first couple of years. But if you're DC fast charging every day, if you're accelerating and decelerating at high rates, yes, you could see a degradation that could drop your range significantly within the first 12 to 24 months. And so a lot of that has to do with how you behave the vehicle. But the range is, unless the climate is super strong, either in the cold or the hot, in average North America, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think the average I've seen is 259 miles per full charge.
Yep.
And Joe says, what happens when you need to replace the battery? It depends on what state you buy it. Not trying to be a naysayer, but there are significant questions on this platform.
I think that's a good one. There are companies out there, ours included, that are building software algorithms to give accurate battery health scores. It's critical, just like we give accurate CR scores for vehicles. If you know the Manheim auction or any other auction lanes, they have mechanical scores on the vehicle. So agnostically what shape that vehicle's in. The same thing is evolving in our industry, because it's going to be important. The good news is we're in infancy stage of batteries now, so none of them are really failing at any rate. Besides a recall would happen, which would be a non-normal event. batteries are staying pretty healthy for a long time. It gives us plenty of time as an industry to give our owners, our dealers, and our industry tools to measure the health of a battery at any given time. It's critically important to understand, but also know that batteries can be remanufactured and put right back in a vehicle, and they can be repurposed and put right into a battery storage system. So there's a lot of life and value. So I'll give you an example. My father's got a Tesla, and he's thinking about getting another battery. His battery is in great shape. He's going to sell that to a battery repurposing entity who will give him quite a nice return on that investment to use to buy his new battery, just by choice. So the batteries hold value for a long time if they're well taken care of, whether they're using the car forever or not. There's a lot to think about there. Those minerals in that battery will eventually be used to build a new battery one day as well. So that's another third life value of that battery that we need to consider, because when you own that car, you own that asset, you own all that value in all three stages of its life. Now, do you have to do that? No, there are mechanisms in place for you to trade it in and those kind of things, but your valuable battery will be part of that valuable trade-in dollar you get.
Well, that kills another myth then, because what I'd always been hearing is this graveyard of batteries across the country, and that based on the data, that's just not true.
No, it's not. We recycle 25,000 metric tons of black mass a year. Those batteries, 98% of the batteries recyclable, 92% can be used in remanufacturing a new battery.
How much coal and oil do we recycle?
I don't know. LFP is a little different. So as technology grows and we're trying to get batteries less expensive and we choose different chemistries, LFP is iron. So it's not as much of the other magnesium and cobalt combinations. Or it doesn't have that. It's got the lithium in it. The problem is once you recycle an iron battery, there's not a lot of economic value on the backside. So we're uncovering, that should last forever, by the way, but we are developing as an industry ways to use that battery in its second life and its third life as well. Right now, anything with nickel, magnesium, cobalt, and lithium is gold. If it fails tomorrow, it's still worth a considerable amount.
Wow. And everybody thought they'd have a big paperweight. That's just not the case. Joe Chambers says, great show, Paul Meijer. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Roger Gutierrez, the Bolt has been recalled. The Bolt, are you familiar with the Bolt? Chevy Bolt, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that.
He says we have to reduce the range on the batteries before we can sell them. What do you mean by that, Roger?
So I can tell you that a battery warranty kicks in at around 70% or less. So I think the Chevy Bolt's 60%. Some of them are different, but once they reach that, they can't be used in an electric vehicle anymore. They don't rate and certify for it, but they can be stored in a battery energy storage system like a Bling or Electrify America. So those kind of battery storage systems that you use to charge vehicles externally.
Okay. Craig Tomasic says, John, you mentioned with EVs, we should drive one before we decide if we like or dislike them. I agree with that statement. Realistically, an EV's range isn't an issue, but the time it takes to recharge is. Obviously, an EV can't recharge in less than 5 minutes like a gas/diesel ICE vehicle can be. With that said, politics aside, why are EVs presented as the be-all, end-all solution when that simply isn't true, working in a sector of the industry that relates to emergency vehicles?
Yeah. I think he makes a great point. If you read any of Elon's stuff, the first thing he says is, we need more oil and gas and nuclear. Help me get my runway. Give me a runway. You're not giving me a runway when you make declarative statements like no more at this point, when you're like, shut the door at a certain date. And so I agree with that comment. We need all. We need all forms of energy, especially in fleet. Look, Class 6 and Class 8, those vehicles take a lot of energy to move. Hydrogen can fix that, can be an application there as well. But at the end of the day,
did you say hydrogen?
Hydrogen could be an application in the larger fleet vehicles. It's not something I study very well, but I hear a lot about hydrogen and how maybe Class 8s, because they're so big, they would need large batteries to have the kind of range you need with that weight and that the towing that they need, the gross weight.
Are you okay going over it? Because we got a lot of questions, and
Yeah, I'm fine.
More we can go into. Craig, great comment, man. That
Yes,
is
very good.
Thank you. Roger Gutierrez says, I'm excited for it, but has a lot of catching up before it will be widespread. I think we'll see, as John mentioned earlier, yeah, it's going to advance probably faster than we think it will.
The OEMs are fully invested, billions and billions of dollars. They have decided that they're all in. So any kind of electoral change, any kind of any change, the train's left a station, in my opinion, and that wasn't the case the last time we went electric with the Nissan Leaf. But remember, the biggest reason why this time is going to be different than next is because battery chemistry and architecture is completely upgraded and advanced. The technology is far outweigh what you remember in your Leaf. I had a Leaf, right? I test drove one for about a month and a half from a Nissan dealer with my friend. And I was scared to go home. It said 100 miles maybe, but it never made it past 60. And sometimes I was rolling back to to where I needed to charge it. So 240, 320, 400, 600 million mile battery. That's why the EV wave is here now. The Nissan Leaf and its technology would have never brought it here. So I'll give you an example. Our prior forecast to 2031, which was probably, we did this somewhere, IHS did this, in 2021 was around 3.2 million. The new electric forecast today by 2030 is over almost 7 million. Wow. So this is what they thought in 2021, that we would reach 3 million by 2031. And now we're saying 7 million, close to 7 million. That just goes to show you how fast we're moving. And that's what Jim Farley said. It's catching us by surprise. We got caught off guard. Which I love that statement because they're prepared. They're number 2 right now. They're number 2 behind Tesla in North America for BEV production. So good for them. But even they got caught off guard.
Wow. Let's see here. Mark says, Mark Williamson, great. Government will save us all. Wow. They did in 1908, didn't they?
So I'm an economist by education, not for my actual profession. And I'm a conservative economist, a fiscal economist. So I love that statement. I understand exactly where it's coming from. Surely would never balk on that one. Debt, we all hate debt. We all hate too much government intervention. But just the whole world is going electric. The EU is light years ahead of us, and they weren't 15 years ago. We slowed, they didn't slow. And the graph separated like this because they kept going on the same track. So now we're trying to play catch up. And because of that, energy independence is going to be critical for us. Recyclable battery material will be part of our national security interests in the next 20 years. So as much as I hate to spend money, and money we don't really have, we all understand our debt scenario, we have to get to an energy independence state. And if the world's going electric, we need to be a big player in that as well.
We kind of missed the boat.
Yeah, we slowed for sure. And you can look at any graph from electric production from globally and look at America as compared to EU and other countries, and we just slowed down.
But like as with any race, and we've all seen the videos online where the person, they start the race, they fall down, they trip, and you see that same person get up and start running like a banshee and win that race. So it's not over until it's over.
So look, I write a lot about that, the American resolve and the American spirit. I encourage your listeners to go to my Substack page or my LinkedIn page. I'm a U.S. Marine. I was in the Marine Corps before I went to college. So I've got the love of country, love of spirit, what made us great from 1776 on. The COVID pandemic showed our resolve and our resiliency, not only the automotive industry, but our country as a whole, how we could rally together. Unfortunately, 9/11 did the same thing. What a wonderful way we came together on a horrible, horrific event. But I feel like we're going to do that again, right? We're coming together again for a common cause. And I'm proud of our spirit. I know that we'll do well even in these tough economic times. So if they're interested in that kind of writing from a Marine's perspective, I think they might like it. They can go take a look there.
I would definitely like. We'll put a link to your blog right in the thread here after the show. Paul Machine, it's the incentives that kickstarts mass adoption. Tesla wouldn't have made it without government incentives.
Yeah, I can say that, like you just said, that's what happened to Henry Ford. That's what happened in the Model T era. Yeah. I can also say that just like Steve Jobs, and I've read Elon's books, and I watch as much as I can get off of his white label interviews. And one of my favorite quotes of his is this: when I started SpaceX, I couldn't afford the best engineers or aerospace scientists, so I became one. I can't do that, right? So there's some pretty unique. I don't know if the incentives alone would have done what Elon had done. Surely it helped him, but to create an aesthetically pleasing vehicle with that type of technology that people wanted to drive and then liked driving and felt proud to drive, the Nissan Leaf didn't accomplish that, and they had a lot more money than Tesla when they went to the production line with it. So I give him a lot of credit, but I don't discount the incentives. But even with the incentives, I would not have been able to do it. So pretty amazing what he's done.
Yeah, no, love him or hate him, you can't take away what he's gotten done. Mark Williamson, how do we dispose of end-of-life batteries on a large scale? Is that even going to be an issue based on what you're saying with the new technology?
Yeah, battery life cycle management is widespread now. It's still in infancy stages, but a lot of our industry is taking up that charge. The stages of battery is production, EV use, second life, which is repurposing, and third life, which is recycling. All of that's being done today in large quantities.
And will be better as in the not too distant future, because it's changing at such a rapid clip right now. But great, great comment, Mark. Thank you. Paul Machine, great discussion. Yeah, this has been fascinating, man. Linda Hansen, excellent discussion this evening. Thank you, Linda. And Anshu Singh, great discussion. Glad to be part of this call. I appreciate you tuning in. I don't know if you've been on the show before, but I appreciate you tuning in tonight. LinkedIn user, probably Lamont, says, what about tear wear, or does he mean wear and tear? Acceleration rate is super fast.
Yeah, I think we just mentioned it. Driving behavior has a lot to do with degradation. Of course, it's over time, right? Yeah. You're not just by going fast, you're not going to degrade the battery. The number one wear and tear item on an EV are the tires. We know that. Goodyear just announced the other day that they're building more durable EV tires. But other than that, the brakes don't wear, right? The regenerative braking protects the brakes for quite some time. I think 3 to 5 years is the expectations on the brakes. So most of the wear and tear is really going to be on the tires, unless you just misbehave. If you misbehave and ram it up every time and slam it still every time. So basically that's just the pulse power up and then the pulling the power out, right? That creates heat for the battery. So it can cause problems.
Tires. It seems that we've been having this discussion around dealerships. I think it's time. It's time we get back in the tire business for those that aren't in it now. Forget the aftermarket shops. They've got nothing on you. You're better equipped. Sell the green. Start that conversation from the minute you meet that customer, whether it's online, walking onto the lot to test drive a car that they want to buy. Have that conversation all along the way. Build the relationship. Get the trust so they come back to you to buy the tires, because tires are going to be hot. No pun intended on that. Eric says, great show today. Thank you, Eric. And Paul Machine, I do 1.9 seconds in a heartbeat. Fun. I just can't even fathom that. Can you put a link to that video where you drove?
I sure can. Yeah, I'll do that as we're talking. I will tell you about the service side. I know it's important to you. The service retention is obviously much higher with an EV because they're unknown, scary, technology is very well advanced, and they usually come back over and over again. But the experience is a lot higher. So CSI scores are higher with EV vehicle services. So look for that to be a leading indicator of what you need to get better at as EVs start being produced. Your high technological experience in there, your scheduling experience, your experience when it comes to follow up and follow through. These are high tech folks. So here's what I always say to the dealers when we're talking about personnel. You want to try to mirror a section of your dealership as an iPhone store, just like Genesis did when they came out with their high-end vehicle. They wanted a concierge on the floor. You don't need that, but a subject matter expert, somebody who can help and experience. And second is, your technicians are now high voltage techs. If I was talking to a new tech today, I would say, do you want to work on an iPhone? We got a job for you. They're not going to be turning monkey wrenches eventually. They're going to be working on high tech, high voltage vehicles. So you have to think about advancing your current folks. And so those are the people that the electric vehicle owners are going to interact with when they're coming into your dealership, and your service business should grow exponentially. Of course, the next 2 years because of used day supply and the aging inventory, but look for that to be a better hit. I'll get the ask your next question. I'll get to the link.
So this really gives us a leg up then in the dealership world to go back and rekindle that relationship that a lot of us have squandered.
Certainly. I would data mine, certainly, okay, so here's a stat I think will make everybody go, wow. I think it was JD Power said that their last study showed that 75% of new shoppers are looking at an EV for the next purchase. 25% are saying, yeah, I'm going to purchase an EV next. So even though you're data mining your DMS and your CRM, think about 75% of them are saying, I'm not sure, I need to learn more. 25% saying, I can't afford the gas price. I'm going. I've heard too much about them. I'm going to find an affordable one. And they are affordable. You just mentioned one, the Kia's 41,000 crossover, beautiful vehicle. The Equinox is getting ready to come out. It's sub 39. You're just talking about the Silverado with me earlier, and that's supposed to be sub 40,000.
Yeah.
Now that's what the F-150 was. And then they came out and said, whoa, wait a minute, only fleet. So expect Silverado to probably do the same, but still much less and more affordable than what's on the market today.
The average car today is 48 grand. So if something that comes in under 40, that gets a 6 times better fuel economy.
That's exactly right.
Less maintenance. I mean, do the math, Mark Williamson says, nice return. A return on an investment means you get more than you paid for it. Total myth. I don't know. You'll never get more than you paid for anything unless it's some vintage car. I see, a 32 3-window coupe for 50,000 being given away, and that car didn't cost that. So you're right. I don't think any of these are an investment. But a car is a means to an end for a lot of people. You need to get from point A to point B. What does that cost you? A car is the second most expensive purchase that you're ever going to have after your home. So when you do the math, I mean, I didn't buy one, but the math indicates that it might not have been a good choice for me. But it's a fair statement, Mark. Definitely a fair statement. Paul Machine, there are 3 companies developing a fast charge battery, 80 to 90% in 20 minutes. Wow. That's incredible because is that out now? No, that's not out yet, right?
It's not out yet. Look, Purdue's at the end of last year, first of this year, came out with a level 2 charger that charges as fast, if not faster, than a DC fast charger. And the way they can do that is they built thermodynamic expulsion through steam instead of through coolant inside the cable. So otherwise you would need a cable this big around to level 2 fast charge at that speed, at that pulse. So the technology is changing. They're saying that you can level 2 charge in less than 15 minutes. Now remember, your vehicle has to be able to take that charge. Your BMS manages that. So there's a lot to do with both sides of that. And that's what this comment is about, Paul, is about battery, because having a battery that can accept that type of charge in that little bit of a time is also part of the technology. But look, everything's pointing to in the next 3 to 5 years for charging not to be an issue at all.
Right. I mean,
I just sent you a comment, by the way, Paul. In a private chat, I sent you the link if you want to send it out.
I just put it out there. That goes to your article, right? With the
yes. Well, no, that's the video of the plaid. I'll send you the other one too. The 0 to 60 and 1.9. It's incredible.
I just seriously, I can't even fathom that kind of speed. Paul Machine says Hyliion. I probably didn't pronounce it right. Hyliion is another startup that is augmenting Class 8 alternative energy powertrains. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of retrofitting going on today where, because of the fuel efficient use of battery electric energy to the powertrain versus the combustion energy from diesel, There's 7 times the fuel efficiency of it for the Class 8s and Class 6s. So they are taking the initiative of pulling out the transmission and the engine and putting in the high voltage propulsion system instead. I'm not sure the cost, anywhere between 25 and 50,000 maybe to do that. You'd have to check that to get some accuracy. But over the lifetime of the fleet of vehicle, and again, I'm talking about Class 6 and Class 8, it's worth it. So there are many companies out there doing that. And I think that's what Paul's referring to there.
Remember, the first widget is always the most expensive one, but over time, the numbers end up being quite different. Mark's got a good one here. Mark Williamson says, hold on, I missed Michael Weldon. Says, knock, knock, let's go. It's here, EVs. Mark Williamson, where will Jiffy Lube be in 20 years?
That's tough. Now, listen, we were told by Tesla that we weren't supposed to change the tires. This is 8-9 years ago, or get any repairs done externally. That's not the story today. So you can take your Tesla in and get it done at one of your, but no one's going to Jiffy Lube for that. They're going to a dealership who's EV savvy, right? So here is my message to all the dealers: become EV savvy. Put it on your website. Say we're all about EVs. Train your service people. Get consultants in to help your floor people be able to talk and dispel the myths and have a conversation.
Wait a minute.
Get Paul to come in.
Wait a minute. Are you suggesting the dealer should listen to a consultant?
Yes. Please.
These guys know.
Yeah, please.
John,
it's so important to have partners. I sent you the link to the newsletter as well. It's so important to stay informed, understand. Listen, I probably read 3 or 4 white papers a week and study this every day for hours a day. And almost every month there's something different. It's different than what I learned a month ago. And that also goes with training your people to understand that the people that are coming in that are EV intenders are probably smarter than they are. They've probably been studying it for 6 months and they're ready to talk about it. And you want your folks to be able to say the right things at the right time, or bring in the subject matter expert on the floor to dispel the myths and say, yes, this is the right battery. This is the battery for this vehicle, instead of saying it's a PHEV when it's really a BEV. Just simple stuff like that. And consultants can keep you up to speed with that by doing all the hard work for you and then just giving you the easy talk tracks and learnings when you need it to get to the next level. It's going to be critical.
John, this is heresy. Now you're suggesting training.
I've been doing this for a long time. Training's the number one thing we can do. It's so hard, though. I know it's hard to adopt a daily and monthly and weekly training schedule, but it's going to be critical now more than ever with EVs.
Now, most of us have seen the movie Groundhog's Day, right? Where with Bill Murray, where he wakes up every day and it's the same thing over and over, all right? Here's our opportunity in automotive to change the script. For too long, we've done things the way we've always done them. And as a result of that, some of these companies in the aftermarket have come and they've scooped up 7 out of 10 of our collective customers and walked them into their service departments. Here is an opportunity for a tremendous reset. We have the facilities, we have the trust at the dealer level, and the customer knows that. There's no way a customer is going to go to Jiffy Lube or any of these other types of places right out of the gate. But stop right there. That doesn't mean that some of these sharp companies aren't going to retool and reinvest and reinvent themselves to be that guy or that gal that you go to save money or to have a better experience. That's how they sell it. So we have an opportunity here. The forces of nature are in our favor if we allow that to happen. If we just go like this and say, no, we're not getting on board. I'm selling my store. I'm out of here. I'm taking the cash and I'm going to Florida. If that's our mentality, then we're going to miss the boat again.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it any better. The problem is Many dealers are only seeing a couple trickle in, a couple here and a couple there, and they're thinking, well, I've got time.
Now.
And it's now. It really is now. The adoption numbers show us that it's now. The number of models coming out next year and the year after and the year after. All you have to do is pick up any industry magazine, and every OEM is investing billions of dollars. They're ready.
Billions.
You want to be ready. You want to be ready. And actually, I can tell you, OEMs are looking for help from the best and most savvy dealers on what that customer experience is going to look like. Be the one that is a consultant to your OEM.
Love it. Mark Williamson says, great show, guys. Thank you, Mark. Wendy Reeves, can't wait to hear the replay on this. Paul Meijer and John Ellis, CBC, thanks for all that you do for our industry. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much.
Yes, very nice.
Craig says, Mark Williamson, ICE vehicles are not discounted yet. We'll have plenty of work on those for years. That is 100% true. If the average car is on the road for 12.2 miles, there's a lot of ICE vehicles that have been purchased today. I'm buying one. It should be in any day. So yes, we have years to go. But as we get more mature, another word for older, the time tends to go faster. And we've seen such a rapid increase in technology in just the last 2.5 years. So please don't think that this is going to be something that takes a while, because it's not. Be the one out in front of the race and keep running, and don't look back. Keep running. I put the links on here so you can check those out. Paul Machine says the fast charge is not available yet. It's under development. But guess what, Paul? Very soon, it'll be coming to you. Craig Tomazik says, I'll say from a tech standpoint, I've worked on plenty of junky ICE vehicles that have kicked my butt. Being an EV tech, where I'll be a lot cleaner, doesn't sound like the worst. No, it doesn't. Doesn't sound like the worst case scenario. I just don't want to do more tires. Craig, you know what? The things that we hate the most, when we develop a mindset where that's not a hindrance but a help, then it will be easier. It's like anything else. If that's our opportunity, it's like the comment I made this morning on SDL. If there's a certain percentage of people that won't go in unless you offer a kiosk, you can either take the stance of, I don't want that business, or I'll put in the kiosk with the hope of earning that person's trust to be able to have that conversation later on. So great comment. You know what? I went from working on cars to working on computers and building computers. What I love about that is the computers are really easy. Really easy. People think, oh, you're some genius. No, I taught myself how to fix computers. There's a hard drive, there's a motherboard, there's a processor, there's memory, there's software, and there's interface with internet. That's all there is. You put those things together, it's easy. And when you need to fix it, you Google it. When you build your own computers, you have no tech support you can call. You have to figure it out yourself. And Google is that tech support.
So an ICE engine has 22,000 moving parts. A battery electric vehicle's propulsion system has 20. 20 versus 2,000. The propulsion section of that vehicle. In my last newsletter, I've got a whole diagram of the 20 parts. So go take a look at my last newsletter on LinkedIn, and that's a car and driver study you can find anywhere. It's pretty well known and popular. But 2,000 things that can go wrong on an ICE engine, 20 things that can go wrong on a BEV. So service ROs will be higher, but fewer. More ROs, higher ROs, fewer ROs, but you're going to get more adoption, and you're going to keep more brand loyal customers because of the high tech components of this vehicle.
Retention,
it's going to be a win-win.
Retention is what's killing us now. So if we're going to get a spike in retention, man, it behooves us to get on board. Steve Apicella, there was once a day where no one could imagine not going to the video store and rent a movie, or having to go to Photomat to get your film developed. 2 for 1. I remember it like it was yesterday. Remember when smartphones didn't exist? What was it, 2007? Evolution is continuous. Embrace it and position yourself for success or not. Bam!
Yeah, mic drop.
Wow. Mike Fisher, Paul and John, excellent discussion. Thank you. It's battery based. Fred Thorne, great show, guys. Our future is up on us. Wow. Yeah. We went a little over, but hey, I own the network.
Great. I enjoyed it.
You were willing to accommodate. So I
Yeah.
very much appreciate that, John. Thank you so much for what you shared here. We didn't even cover all of it, but I sincerely hope that this gave the folks that are watching tonight and the ones that will watch it on the replay, I sincerely hope that this will give them some real world information. Just two Joes talking about cars with no axe to grind. He has both vehicles. I only have ICE vehicles, and I'm not pro or con either way. We merely present the information so that you can make an educated choice. And my goal is always every week to bring on the stuff that helps you at your dealership, because we are best equipped to take care of the customer. Don't let this business go to the other guys and gals. It's our business. It's our business to lose. So hopefully by bringing these thought leaders, because we're not experts in this yet, every week, there's no hoopla, there's no rhymes, there's no crazy stuff. We simply talk about the stuff that you can use today, right now, to get better. And I got a couple of comments before we sign off. Roger Gutierrez says, great stuff. Thank you. And Mike Fisher says, thank you, Paul and John. Great discussion.
Yeah.
On that note, Paul Machine says, another great SNL show. Thank you. I thank you guys and gals for watching, and the ones that watched it on the replay. And I can't thank you enough, John. This has been eye-opening. So thank you.
You're welcome. I enjoyed being here. Great dialogue.
Please stay on for a moment after we sign off here. So have a safe and successful week next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. John, don't go away. Thanks again.